What do you think you ever earned from the history of AOD? Because
a lot less than we put into
it. Because it's usually there's a negative sign, right? I mean, I know that I probably spent more being in the Nihilistic than the Nihilists ever generated. So it's not a way to get rich, kids. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You know, punk rock and hardcore, not a way to get
rich. You got to do it because you like it, you know?
Yeah, and when did you decide that drums was your thing, though? When did you decide I like playing the drums? Who was the drummer? Was it Buddy Rich or one of these guys?
Bunny Carlos.
Bunny
Carlos.
Cheap Trick?
Yeah. There's a story in the book about when I was a kid, my mom had bought me a button making machine, and I went to the Capitol Theater with Cheap Trick buttons.
In Passaic?
Yes, to sell them and try to make some money. And I was there like 15 minutes, and one of the roadies sees me, and he makes me come with him, and I'm like, oh God, I'm in trouble. And he brings me into the Capitol Theater and right into the dressing room up to Rick Nielsen. And Rick Nielsen looks at my board of buttons, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna get sued. And he takes one of the buttons that has his image on it, and he puts it on his guitar strap, and he's like, you got a ticket for the show? And I'm like, no, I gotta be home before dark, so no. And he's like, well, we're about to do sound check. You wanna watch it? You gotta sit right there. And we put me right next to Buddy Carlos, like right to the side of him. And I just sat there, and I was like, oh, I wanna do that. He made it look so easy, and he was so good.
Were you into any musical instrument at that point? Were you playing?
Because
mine first was the trombone. I just want to say I wisely switched from trombone to guitar. Did you start out on something that wasn't drums?
Trombone.
Trombone?
Yes.
Oh my God, Paul, trombone? Did you start on trombone?
I started guitar from the start.
I'm gonna freak out. All right.
The reason why is I wanted to play the drums, but all the snare drummers were taken. So the only thing open was trombone. I had braces at the time and these big Jewish lips, man. These did not work well in a trombone. And my lips would get so cut up from the braces.
I would get such lip pain from trying to play the trombone.
Plus the trombone is so freaking loud, man. It is so loud. God bless my mom for having to be in an apartment while I'm trying to practice playing trombone. Not a good thing.
Was your mom or your parents those kind of parents that would come to the show? Because I was always amazed, because I couldn't imagine my mother or father ever coming to a gig.
I found out later that my dad and my brother did show up at the Clifton High School show, and were in the back, and I didn't know it. So I never really talked to them, and my brother doesn't really remember too much about it, but.
Now, your dad was a pharmacist, right, over here?
No, he was the sales guy.
Sales guy at the pharmacy. Yeah. Paul's dad was a fireman.
That's correct.
Bruce's dad was a policeman.
Correct.
Jim's dad, what did he do?
Don't know what Jim did. Yeah.
No,
Jim never talked about it.
Con man. I'm going to say con man. Jack's dad drank.
Basically.
Yeah. And who am I leaving out? Anybody? I think that's everybody.
Keith and Wayne, I have no idea.
So Keith's dad, Keith Hartel, who joined later, was a musician, but basically blue-collar roots for all of you guys, right?
Definitely.
Was there any encouragement to go into a music career, or did they think you were all crazy to want to play music for a living?
Well, we never wanted to play music for a living. We just did what we did, and it went where it went. We never really planned it or thought about it like that.
I always said it was a phase I was going through.
You're still going through it? That's
later.
Still going through. I know Jack was the one who couldn't tour because he had kids and he had to work and he had to have a job. But did the rest of you ever think at one point this is going to turn into something especially when you started to become more of a power punk sort of band in the mode of what Green Day eventually became, for instance, who were people that sat in the audience of your shows, by the way. Was there a moment when you thought this could be a thing?
It's weird with us because the better we got, and the better the songs got, the more we lost our core audience. So, we never saw it as we're going to make more money off this. We were making less, because we're peeling off all the hardcore kids.
They thought you were sort of leaving them behind.
If I had $1 for everybody on that Ishtar tour that screamed, "Play faster!"
I love that.
Then
record,
I could retire.
I love that record. I mean, I think it's a fantastic record, and I think it holds up. But
it's a good record. It's just not what people would expect from a thrash band.
Yeah. So is that a trap? Is that a box that you think that you were put in by the audience?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
But
it was a trap that the audience put there.
But I would say that we always moved that box. We tried to take the piss out of all the rules, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, Bruce would play CBGBs in his freaking underwear, you know?
Long before the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah,
I would imagine too, yeah. I got to see the shows at Bowery Electric. I didn't make it to Dingbats and Clifton, unfortunately.
Oh, it was brilliant.
Were there young kids there still? Because I saw young kids at Bowery Electric. There are still kids coming into the quote-unquote scene, which I'm amazed is still around. But do you think the music is timeless now? Hardcore is here to stay?
Definitely, because, listen, all it takes is like a band of NoFX's size to say we were influenced by AOD, and then all these kids are checking out into AOD. It doesn't take a lot. I mean, when the guy from Dark Throne, Fenriz, made that YouTube video, have you seen that?
No.
Where, it's the singer of Dark Throne, the legendary Norwegian death metal band. And he's being interviewed for German TV, and he's playing the guy Rock and Roll Gas Station, and he's lip syncing along with it. He's like, it's very funny, and the video went viral because he is pretty influential to people. Now, that video has got more hits than any AOD video if you've ever combined them. And then we started selling to all these metal people out of the blue, like all these death metal people were buying our stuff.
And Kim Kardashian shows up the other day in an agnostic front shirt that somebody gave her. So get her an Adrenaline OD shirt. That would be good. That's wild. So I mean, it's like and you're in the punk rock museum, right, in Las Vegas.
That is correct.
You guys have a tour diary in there, and
the Jack's Long Johns from the Mungus cover that has a smile face on it are in there. One of our early T-shirts. Yeah, the tour diaries in there. Some flyers and some records. Yeah.
You're legit.
Yeah.
And when do you get voted into like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Jim's been trying to get us into the New Jersey one for years
New
now.
Jersey
God bless
Hall of
him.
Fame. I think it's
He tries every time.
Jim Testa's in the audience, by the way, who wrote a nice article recently about your book, and
clearly no one could read.
Which it's behind a paywall, but he'll send it to you if you ask him real nice. Give me your email address. But in terms of the book, what was the biggest challenge for you? Because I think you said you had access to, what was it, 85 and 86 you guys kept the tour diary? And
84 and 85.
84 and 85, so you had tour diaries. You've always been a collector of flyers, so you had a lot of the band's flyers.
Yeah.
So what was the biggest thing to get this ball rolling when you decided to sit down and write this book?
What made it doable in the first place was a fan-run website called Metallic Promo. And this guy meticulously, he'll get into a band, whatever band it is, and for this one it was AOD, and he'll get his hands on every flyer and print ad, and he'll figure out from start to finish every show we've ever played. And he listed it in chronological order. And it made writing this book in a historical chronological order possible. Because I've got every show from, as much as I remember too, and then it was just a matter of like, what do I remember about this? Well, not much happened here, but at this show, like Youth of Today got to a fight with their entire audience. I should read about that.
And you checked with all the other band members to see if the facts were
I talked individually with all of them. I came up to New Jersey and spent some time with Paul and Jack, and we just talked and went over history. I had some questions and some things I wanted to fill in.
Paul, did anything strike you as like that's not accurate? That's not the way I remember it. Get closer to the mic when you answer.
It's all dirty lies.
Dirty lies.
No, it's very accurate.
Is Dave the only person that could have written this book? By the way, the history of the band. I mean, would anybody else have tried to?
I wouldn't have had it in me to do that. No.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave.
And I don't think anybody else was sober enough to remember a lot of this stuff. I mean, these guys were cutting loose. They were partying all the time.
You were living like there was no tomorrow, weren't you? By the way, the book is named after one of the worst gigs you did. Interesting,
Yeah.
and there's a song, by the way. If it's Tuesday, this must be Walla Walla. Walla Walla's in Washington. What stands out to you about the Walla Walla gig?
we had just done this crazy show with Poison Idea and Battalion of Saints, and it was packed, and it was like people were. It was so crazy that there was like fights all through the show, and
Yeah, skinhead, Nazi skinheads. You had everything.
Those are the worst
Yeah.
kind of skinheads.
I remember Jerry from Poison Idea jumping off the stage and beating the guy up. You remember that?
Yeah.
And it was just like a crazy, interject, packed punk show. And then the next show is in Walla Walla. We're playing some like school. Nobody knows who we were, and I kept getting all these kids asking me, "What part of Walla Walla are you guys from?"
The ass end of Walla Walla. By the way, let me mansplain the skinhead thing for a minute, because back in the day, they were aesthetic skinheads. They liked the look.
Yeah, they were
They
just
shaved
bald
their heads.
before.
They wore boots and braces, but they didn't believe in the nationalist ideology, the racist ideology. And you would literally ask these kids, "Are you a good skinhead or a bad skinhead?" You remember that question?
Yeah.
Are you a good skinhead or a bad skinhead?
We had some good skinhead friends.
Yeah, and they were just into the style. To me, it never struck me as a great look, because you could easily be mistaken for a bad skinhead. But let's differentiate so we don't offend any good skinhead. Just trying to differentiate. What are AOD fans generally like, by the way? How would you describe the typical AOD fan?
A little bit weird.
A little bit weird.
A little bit weird.
Why? I've drilled down on weird for a minute. Why weird?
Maybe it's because I'm thinking about the last show, and some of the people that I remember from being young, and they're very strange.
You were doing a lot of heckling from the drum set. What was the crack about cataracts? I wish I had cataracts so I couldn't see how you've aged.
It's probably
Something like that.
Yeah.
Paul, who was the best heckler in the band, would you say? Would it be Dave
Jack.
or Jack?
Jack would probably be the one.
Jack, to me, was the funniest member of AOD by far.
Oh, yeah.
On stage. he was
Jack
funny.
is pretty devastating.
Yeah.
It's pretty devastating. What about, because there was talk about doing some kind of support tour for the book. Are we gonna see AOD on any stages at any point soon? Is it too early?
Stages of Alzheimer's.
Yeah, well, there you go. And is it too early to divulge?
We have some plans. We'll see if they work out. There's definitely one thing that if it happens, we're gonna do it, and it'll be bigger than the shows we're used to playing. So.
And you'll actually get paid this time, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, actually.
Tell the Doug Holland story, by the way, because I have a similar one where you ended up playing in a mafioso joint
Oh yeah.
in New York. What was it
Yeah.
called? Pizza Connection?
Pizza a Go-Go.
Pizza a Go-Go.
We played this place, and I think we were the first punk band to play Pizza a Go-Go, us and Kraut. And they were going to have other bands. That was the game plan. They were going to start booking this place. And we go to get paid, and a guy comes down, big guy, and he's like, "I need one member of each band to follow me." So me and Doug go up the staircase.
Doug Holland
Yes.
of a crowd, yeah.
And this guy knocks on the door, and this door opens, and there's a room. It's about like 10 times the size of this room, and it's really smoky, and there's gigantic poker tables, maybe a dozen of them, and there's all these Goomba guys with the tracksuits and the chains and the cigars, and they're all playing poker and smoking. And the guy is informed by our escort up there that this is the band, they need to be paid. Guy pulls out this wad of hundreds out of his pocket, peels a couple off for me, a couple off for Doug, and we say thank you. And we turn around and we're walking down the stairs, and Doug turns to me, and he's like, "Holy shit, dude!" It's like that was like the fucking mafia. And later on, after the computer era happened, I went back and I just was curious to see if anybody ever made that connection on the computer. And it turns out there's a whole story about it. The place was a front for the Genovese crime family, and it got shut down. So yeah, that was the Genovese crime family that we witnessed in there playing poker.
And the Nihilistics did a show at this place called Legs in Valley Stream that was a mafia front. Later you realize it.
A lot of these
And
clubs were.
A lot of them
Yeah.
were. And we opened for the Stimulators, very influential early New York band with Harley Flanagan on drums. And we go to get paid, and on top of this pile of cash is a Colt 45 pistol. And I'm in there with Ron, the singer, and I'm looking at him like, are we supposed to pull the cash out from underneath the gun? And what are we supposed to? It was almost like, take the money if you can.
Yeah.
And Ron, who I found out later, might have, been in a family that was sort of mob tangential, managed to get us paid.
Okay.
Somehow he knew the language to speak to get us paid. But yeah, did it occur to you back then that a lot of these places were being run by the mob that we were?
That was the first
appearing
time.
in?
The second time was we played this place called the Candy Bar in Jersey. The
Well,
Candy
that's a tip-off right
The Candy Bar later became the Bada Bing, the actual club where they filmed it, where they did The Sopranos.
Yeah.
And
Satin
back-
Dolls, right? On Route
Right.
46,
Before
Satin
that, it was
Dolls,
called the Candy Bar. Then it
Okay.
became Satin Dolls.
And
Right.
it showed up as the Bada Bing and
Right.
the Sopranos.
And me and Bruce had gone on in there a few days before the show to put up some flyers. And we walk in, and the guy stops us right away. He's like, "You can't come in here with those boots. You can scuff up the floor." And we're like, "What? We just want to, we just want to put up flyers." And the guy's like really getting angry with us. And some older guy that was sitting at the bar sees what's going on and comes over. He's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "These guys don't want to come in with boots." And he's like, what do you want? We're just playing here. We just want to put up the flyers. "Oh, you're in the band." He takes us, and he brings us in. He buys us drinks.
You're those nice boys in an adrenaline
you're in the
overdose.
band. Come on in, guys.
Come on in.
Yeah, that place was super mobbed up.
It didn't occur to me till much later that in the early 1980s, we were going into some really dangerous parts of Manhattan and other places. We were so unaware. We were so unaware.
We played, I think it was the Sin Club in Alphabet City, probably like Avenue C or D. And we played
It
with
was
False
like
Prophets.
4th Street between C and D.
Yeah, we played with the False Prophets, right?
Yeah.
And like there was gunshots, everybody had to run inside. Then we're hanging out, and this guy is coming up the street on a motorcycle, and this guy just comes out of nowhere with a 2x4 and smacks him in his helmet. Guy goes flying off the bike. Bike falls on the floor. This guy just picks up the bike, takes off on it, and leaves the guy on the floor.
Well,
It's
how
like,
else are you going to
whoa.
steal a motorbike?
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
Yeah, we've seen some crazy shit, especially when we started going to A7 and had to be around, that Tompkins Square Park area at night.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, the memories.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, we recorded at the Bad Brain studio, and I still have a contact high from that place. I still remember walking into the biggest cloud of pot smoke that I had ever seen in my life,
Right.
and recording our first EP in basically the time it took to play the song. So I think we paid for 2 hours of recording time. That was about it. But yeah, we went into some places and we never thought about our own physical safety. Is that because we're just stupid men?
I think it's just youth. I don't think you have those fears that you would have as an adult with developed thoughts. So
Yes.
you're not quite
Yeah.
as scared.
This might be dangerous. I
mean,
don't have that thought yet.
Had either Paul or my mom knew where we were going at 3 a.m, that would have stopped probably.
Would have put an end to it.
My mom knew I was going to play in New York, but I don't think she had any idea what part of New York I was playing.
A lot of books are coming out now from guys our age, memoirs about this particular time, this particular period. What do you think most of them miss, and what did you want to put particular in this book? What did you want to get that others have overlooked about the scene?
Listen, everybody's got their own unique story, and everybody's story is going to be different. Now, this book is going to be a lot different from like the Harley Flanagan book. We live different lives.
I've read the Harley Flanagan book. It's a lot different.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the books that I've seen so far.
You couldn't have dropped the reference to Anthony Bourdain in yours? Because he was like the neighbor across the hall from Harley, right? So shows up a lot in that book.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I would say that I lost my train of thought.
I do that to people. Dave Scott Schwartzman. Why didn't you use the Schwartzman when you were in the band? Was it too long to fit on the back of the record? Because I became Chris T because I didn't want to use my last name. I was ashamed.
Couple reasons. I used to get beat up in school, and everybody would punch me and go, "Schwartzman!" So I learned to really hate the name.
Sounds like anti-Semitism. I'm just going to go out on that.
Yeah. And when we first started playing and people did find out my real name, my parents were listed in the phone book back in those days, and I would get, weird AOD fans calling my house, and it was a good thing in retrospect, I probably didn't use.
So where did the Scott come from? Why
My
Scott?
middle name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Dave Scott Schwartzman. So I didn't really have to make anything up. I just had to cut the Schwartzman out.
That works for me. Paul, is there anything I haven't asked yet that you think should be asked before we turn the microphone over to the audience for a little Q&A?
I'm satisfied.
Paul
Good
is
job.
satisfied.
Good job.
Do you want to help with that, Paul? You want to give the microphone to anybody who's got a question for Dave, by the way? Just take it off the...
I can probably do this without the microphone.
Oh, okay. But I'm recording, Jim. I would prefer you on mic.
Please state your name because none of us know who you are, Jim.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jim from Jersey, long time, first time. So with Chris here, something I didn't ask you, Dave, when we talked for my story, but I'm curious hearing your perception of this compared to mine. So the New York hardcore scene was nihilistic, Reagan Youth, mine was Agnostic Front, Cro-Mags,
Crowd.
yeah, False Prophets. So kind of a diverse bunch of different city kids. And then about 1986, and in my memory, virtually overnight, the CBGB hardcore matinees became bald kids from Connecticut in hoodies.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what Youth of Today, Bold, that whole thing. That straight edge thing came in and just kind of took over. And I'm wondering, A, if that affected you guys, and in terms of audience and whatnot, and B, like what your memories of that transition are.
Didn't affect us really at all because around that time that those bands started coming up, we started going back to the punk rock stuff. We were about to put out Cruising with Elvis. So we were changing, and we were changing because the hardcore scene wasn't what it started out to be. It was becoming a macho, guys who from, that used to beat us up are now coming to shows and shaving their heads.
Or what's killed Kurt Cobain, just to be honest about that, yeah.
But so, that was the reason that we wanted to do everything to take the piss out of that. There was too many fights at shows. A lot of our fan base stopped coming to shows because they just didn't want to deal with that crap anymore. It's not fun when you have to worry about like all these fights all the time.
I was quoted by either Wendy in Guillotine, the great fanzine, or it might have been Jeff O in Flesh and Bones as saying it's macho aggression and I don't approve of it. Like about slam dancing, because we would get a mosh pit going in front of the stage,
Right.
and then one of the lunkheads would jump on the stage and destroy all my guitar stuff, like unplug my pedals, the whole thing, and it would make me livid. I didn't need it.
Yeah.
I
There
didn't
were
know.
people that really hated it. I remember Jack Rabbit really hated the slam dancing. He thought of it as the death of hardcore. But this as well as anybody, in the early days of the New York hardcore scene, every band was different. There wasn't a mold. The False Prophets didn't sound like the Nihilistics.
Or
who
Reagan
didn't-
Youth, or yeah.
Everybody had their own sound. It wasn't until like those bands started putting out records, influencing other bands, and then you started getting the watered down versions.
Yeah.
And I think, Agnostic Front probably was the band that really got the face of New York hardcore. And they're great guys and they're a great band, but they had this really rowdy douchebag following back then,
Isn't that, Jim, that's a problem, right? The fans of an artist. This is why I won't go see Bruce Springsteen. Never mind the ticket prices, I can't take the fans. So the fans will kill a musical act faster than anything else for you, so.
Well, everyone knows the story of Kurt Cobain becoming successful and seeing all the guys he hated in high school.
The kids that beat him up.
Yeah, that
right?
beat him up in high school in the
Yeah.
front row of his concert. Speaking of mosh pits, I do have one story. So there was a show at CBGB's, probably a hardcore matinee, and it was when Keith was in the band.
Okay.
And I had my camera, which I normally did, And on this day, for some reason, I had color film. Usually I shot black and white for the fantasy, but I had color film. And as we're going out, this guy comes over to me and he goes, "Hey, Jim, it's great you got your camera. We got this thing coming up we really need photos for." So I stood in the middle of that mosh pit with my camera, risking life and limb to get photos of that show, some of which I still have. But
See how different we are from Danzig, who would have smacked the camera right out of your hand.
You know, the only place I ever had problems was City Gardens. You know how you have the camera and you have the little flash thing? I had 3 of those broken off by kids jumping into me at City Gardens. And I didn't go to City Gardens. And CBGB's, I never had a problem. So.
Thank you, Jim. And does anyone else want to ask a question, by the way, before we
Question?
wrap up? Because Steve has been very nicely letting us stay here and chat.
I have one
hand up over
question.
there. You want to hand the microphone over?
So were there any stories you left out of the book to protect the innocent or guilty, for that matter?
There were people I left out of the book that didn't really contribute to the band, but were around a lot for various personal reasons. There wasn't like any story that I left out on purpose. There was only stories that I thought about later on. The one thing that the book didn't convey was what it was like to actually spend those hours, many hours, like sometimes we'd be driving for 2 days straight to a show, spending all those hours close together in a van, and how we would amuse ourselves. And there was a lot of different things we did to amuse ourselves. I mean, we would neck slap and wet willy each other. The driver, whoever was the driver, would get that. We would.
I heard of what Willie's. What the hell is a neck slap? Don't demonstrate.
Boom! Right, the driver.
All right.
It's a noisy thing.
Let's see. We would have a thing called Highway Playhouse, where we would make improv plays up as we drove, and we would come up with fake band names.
Oh, nice.
We broke down on the Bay Bridge in San Francisco, and I remember throwing like a bunch of the Among Us records into the water to see if a shark would eat it. There was a lot of
Wacky hijinks.
Wacky hijinks on the road. Yeah.
Before we wrap up, there's a screenplay apparently you're working on. Did you go on strike? The WGA struck
I'm
yesterday?
really glad I did not join the
Did you
union
strike
at this
yourself?
time yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's going to play you in the film, and who's going to play Paul?
They're going to have to use some prosthetics and get Brad Pitt to play me, obviously.
I thought you were going to go with a young unknown, like a young unknown. What is the film going to concentrate on? Is it going to be about the touring aspect?
Basically, I'm going with the Sopranos. I mean, the Goodfellas method. And the Goodfellas method is take 15 minutes to summarize everything that got you to the point where the movie starts. Taking all the background of how I grew up, how I met these guys, and how the band started, and we got big enough to tour, and then boom, we're starting our 85 tour.
So I picture a montage of like little Dave shopping at Two Guys in the record department, that kind of
It's
thing.
a lot funnier.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, it's really, I'm really happy. When I got to a point with the book, there were certain days when it would be very hard for me to write. It just wasn't working. And then there was other days where the floodgates were open, and I was, oh my God, and I'd be up for hours. And I'm having a lot of that. And when I go back and read it, like the next day, I'm really liking what I got. I want this to be the movie that I want it to be,
The movie that we need. Very proud accomplishment. You should be very proud
Oh, thank
of
you.
this, by the way,
Thank you
because it's
very
not easy to actually put out a book, and a book that we've all been waiting for. It's available here for purchase. We got a T-shirt too. Is that the only T-shirt, by the way? Well, we're gonna fight over it. We're gonna fight over the T-shirt. Thanks again to Steve and the staff.
Thank you very much.
Bookstores,
Thanks,
Jersey
sir.
City. And thank you, Paul Richards, for showing up and supporting the
Yay.
cast here. We appreciate it. And thanks to your publisher. Thanks to D Wolf Publishing.
Thanks for coming out.
Stick out.
You're awesome.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Chris.
Good luck with whatever comes next. Are you going to sign some books now?
Sure.
All right. He'll personalize them for you, too.
Sure.
All right? Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Let's play some AOD! Yes!